All right, so another region now, South Africa has voiced its dismay over the group of 20 ministers meetings it hosted on its global economic issues, ended without a consensus or even a communique. Now, news reports say that top officials, including the finance ministers of the key countries of the group, failed to attend, while delegates in attendance were far apart on issues such as climate finance. Look at some excerpts from the summary of the meetings as presented by South Africa's Minister of Finance and the governor of its central bank, Leseta Kganyego.
During the last 4 days, the deputies, finance ministers, and central bank governors held very constructive discussions. We considered and discussed the work program of the finance track working groups, the financial sector issues, the global partnership for financial inclusion, international taxation, and the joint finance and health task force. Most members endorsed the work of the program, which provides the basis for the presidency to work with co-chairs in partnership with international organizations to implement the work program for the year. The deputies had a very robust discussion on various components of what is called the chair's summary. The South African president has been keen to use every opportunity to forge consensus as far as possible, though it also respects and acknowledges that differences remain. Consequently, we will issue a chair's summary based very much on the version we have discussed extensively and refined in the past few days. That's the key thing we will be issuing, that chair's summary, which summarizes some of those issues. If you don't have it by now, we have issued the chair's summary.
Just so that it becomes clear. There are lots of things that has changed. You would have seen that both the IMF, the World Bank, and even the OECD revised their growth forecast. In our case in South Africa, we also did revise our growth forecast since then. Lots of things have changed. There is heightened uncertainty in the global economy, and you would have realized that in many instances, central banks present a baseline forecast and also present scenarios. A presentation of the alternative scenarios is taking account of the fact that there is so much uncertainty. And here at home, it has been a tradition for our Treasury to also release a risk statement as part of the budget, and that's how you manage the uncertainty.
The issue of the communique and the absence thereof is not something new. To my knowledge, I mean, since the Russia-Ukraine war, it has been difficult to find a joint communique. We've always relied, since Indonesia in 2022, on what is called a chair statement. Same in India. Brazil, they managed to do it something differently. But the matters that gave occasion to that are slightly different now. Now that new differences have emerged on a number of other topics, which make it difficult to have what is called a joint communique. And we have reverted back to what we did in Indonesia and India, to a chair's summary. The matter of the African voice in the G20 is an ongoing challenge. That's why, for instance, we have found the African Union being accepted as a full member is to give additional voice to South Africa. In addition to that, Nigeria and Egypt have been accepted now as permanent invitees. Is a process of giving that. With the South African presidents, we have invited all the 5 regional economic communities to participate. SADC was represented, was still trying to talk to the East Africa, COMESA, and ECOWAS as well to be part of this.
There is the issue of the international financial architecture, and there is the issue of sustainable finance. Let's start with the international financial architecture. The central to the international financial architecture had been the creation of a global financial safety net. That global financial safety net has got at its center the International Monetary Fund. The second layer of that global financial safety net is the regional financing arrangements like Shanghai and the BRICS contingency reserve arrangements. The third layer is the bilateral arrangements between countries, like South Africa has got a swap line with the People's Bank of China. We've got and a number of countries also have that. That completes the global financial safety net. And right at the bottom is what the countries themselves provide as a safety. Countries holding on to foreign exchange reserves. That's the net. And in the conversations about this international financial architecture for a long time, and which links back to the question that was raised about African voices, had been the issue of the voice and representation of African countries in that international financial architecture. The conversations started under the Australian presidency of the G20 in 2006. And it took a number of years until 2009, where a third chair was created for sub-Saharan Africa in the World Bank. Last year, finally, a third chair for sub-Saharan Africa had been created in the International Monetary Fund, thus making the board of the 2 Bretton Woods institutions to be made up of 25 members. These things that have to be negotiated globally take time, and I can understand sometimes people say, tell us what you achieved in this meeting. Think of that configuration. Decision process started in 2006, and the IMF had only eventually finalized the issue of voice of the African countries in 2024. So that is the international financial architecture. There is the issue of the sustainable finance, which is on the agenda of the G20 and has been part of our presidency's work. That work is covered by the Sustainable Finance Working Group within the G20. And it looks at the issues of adaptation financing, mitigation financing, transition financing in terms of the climate change, and thus the contribution to sustainable development. That work takes place alongside the work of the Framework Working Group of the G20, and the Framework Working Group is responsible for driving the agenda for a strong, inclusive, and sustainable growth. And the 3 pillars of that work of the Framework Working Group is made of 3 components. One is the issue of macroeconomic stability, which is fiscal and monetary. Those are the 2 components. And the third had been positive structural reform programs which are driven domestically. And so all of those, you cannot take a global position and say, there is now global financial stability or global price stability. You take each other, you hold each other to account because everyone